thank you all for joining us today. It's great to have so many of you to find out a little bit more about GovFinance. From the chat we've had before, I know some of you will be internal auditors for councils already using GovFinance, which is excellent. Others may have councils who are looking to move across, and some of you may not have perhaps a direct link, but want to understand a bit more about the software, as more and more councils do take up GovFinance to understand a little bit more about how it works and really the behind the scenes to support with audits. So great to see so many smiling faces. I hope they're smiling at the end. So we've got a very small GovFinance team at Cloudy, although it may well soon be growing. Firstly, myself, and I come from the sector, so I'm a clerk and an RFO myself, and for the past 4 years have been conducting internal audits within town and parish councils. I do also sit in a separate role on the Internal Audit Forum Executive Committee and run our standards and improvements team. So very keen in that role as well as this one to make sure that internal auditors have that opportunity to learn about new technologies coming to our sector. And we're also joined by Ken, our senior project manager and very much technical specialist. Do you want to give a quick introduction, Ken?
Sure. I started life as an accountant, in fact, an auditor. Started my career, I should say. I wasn't born an accountant, or some people would argue different. So I did quite a lot of auditing first, and then worked for years as an accountant. And then I actually enjoyed using accounting systems rather than being an accountant. So I jumped ship and went from being a user to a supplier. And I've been providing systems to all sorts of organisations, charities, commercial organisations across the country, in fact, various parts of the world as well, for the past 20 or so years. And so I've got a lot of different experience in different scenarios and different sizes and shapes of organisations as well. So happy to bring that experience to bear. And we're already in the middle of doing a number of implementations for GovFinance. And we've got one going live next week, actually. So we had one go live in a few weeks ago, the beginning of November, and we've got another one live in December, and we've got ones going live February, and then a few waiting to March. So really busy, great stuff.
Absolutely, thanks, Ken. And Ken's alluded to there that there's obviously more and more councils moving across, and we did want to draw attention to one in particular, which is Warfield Parish Councils, one of the first to make the jump, if you like, to GovFinance, and they're happy with us sharing the information. And it's fair to say that when they were looking at their accounts package, they came with some challenges, that they struggled with some of the other software that they were using at the moment, that it couldn't keep up with the rate of change within their account systems, the number of transactions. It just became quite unwieldy for the staff to manage and administer. The automation side too, the other options for accounts packaging didn't have as strong of an offer on automation as GovFinance, which is, between the two, I think the main driver that brought them across earlier this year. We'll come on to a bit later this background of GovFinance being built on Microsoft Business Central. But what has been great to see with Warfield, and of course the other councils that have moved across, is actually the automations that we've built into this process and software in practice. So the payments being automated, the invoices, when emailed in, are actually, there's an automatic process which can draw the information out of invoices and input it into the system. Not, I will include, without a human check on it. So from an audit perspective, there's still very clear responsibility there of officers. And similarly, automations around bank reconciliation too. There's obviously strong benefits too with integrations with Outlook, Teams and other Microsoft products, which really helped bring Warfield across and singing our praises, really. And we can see there a short testimonial. You know, they've really been content with the move across, and I hope as more councils move across, it's the same experience that you'll be seeing firsthand too, of councils joining the GovFinance offer. And I will add, just before I dive into some of the other slides, this isn't going to be death by PowerPoint. I've just got a couple more slides to go through, and then Ken will kindly share his screen and we'll get to see a bit of a hands-on demonstration of the finance system itself. So as we've said here, GovFinance is based on Microsoft, and the great benefit of that compared to some of the other options is that Microsoft and Business Central is used not just by the town and parish council sector, but by businesses globally. Now, what does that mean? It means you've got a product which is tried and tested hundreds, if not thousands of times more than it ever would be within our sector for programs and software solutions that are catering just for our sector. And I'll draw on some of those benefits now. So first of all, cloud-based. There's obviously challenges with councils looking at storing safely its information, so ensuring that there is that cloud-based backup with remote access means two things. One, the data is secure from when a laptop crashes to the floor, but it also means it can be accessed anywhere for council officers to work. There's a lot of functionality built into the programs across not only the sort of traditional 365 apps, but other solutions being developed all the time through the Microsoft ecosystem. There's apps galore that can be linked into Business Central, which really does make sure it's that highly customizable solution. And I think finally, just to draw in on how swift we can make the deployments. You know, it's obviously a time commitment for councils moving accounting software. There's no hiding around that, but we've seen quite swift deployments where councils want to move quickly and have been quite flexible with that to ensure that there is that support for councils when they are making what is quite a significant move for them on their finance systems. I wasn't expecting that second list. That brought me up. And I've mentioned 365 applications already, and Copilot too. Perhaps many of you will already start to have seen the benefits of using Copilot and artificial intelligence within softwares. Well, that offers benefits, and it's growing stronger day by day in the offer that it has within Business Central. And the security point too, that confidence in Microsoft products gives our customers a lot of confidence. So the capabilities of GovFinance, I think there's a lot of things here that look pretty standard for an accounts system. But I think, as I've mentioned already, the real key bits to draw out are, first of all, that automation around the reconciliation for councils around invoices coming in and automating that process of inputting the data. And we've also got a lot of time that's been spent on ensuring that there's a rigorous robust process for approvals within the system, which I think Ken will go into too. And the thing that we've seen more and more is, particularly with the larger councils, and I'm sure you'll have seen it too when doing your audits, is whilst there are the standard approvals processes and sort of schedules of delegations you might see, a lot of the larger councils really have tailored those processes to make sure they've got robust processes, but robust processes that work for them and their structures internally of staff. So we are key to ensure that we can support whatever processes they have there for authorisations too. So there's no downgrading within the system of any checks and balances they have when making or approving payments within the system. And just finally, there's obviously integration we offer with a lot of our other apps within GovSuite, which is Cloudy's name for a lot of their packages for councils, including the apps for bookings, cemeteries, allotments, and so on, which you can see the strengths of obviously having systems that link and talk to each other very clearly. I did want to include this one just quickly. There's also options for use by mobile device, whether it's an iPad or phone. I'm sure not everyone's dream to be doing finances on the phone on the go, but we've seen particularly use cases where officers want to quickly get a fact or a bit of information up while they're in a meeting, that they can have it on a portable device and it pops up, which has been particularly useful for officers. I have already touched on this, so I won't go through it in more detail, but it goes without saying that link into the 365 package, and I'm sure many of the councils that you audit will be using Teams, Outlook, Excel, etc. That strong link makes it so much easier, I think, for councils to understand and start using Business Central, and actually not need to start setting up new email addresses or new accounts with different processes. It's talking to the systems they're already using, which makes it far easier. And that Power BI element is one I'll draw on here, which we use for a separate Business Central GovFinance dashboard, which pulls out that information, particularly for auditing, and presents it in a much more clear, accessible format. And this report can be a bit easily customized, delve into the layers down to transactional level, which really does support both the openness of reporting to councils and officers, but also when it comes to audit too. And finally, I did just want to touch on security, and obviously with it being linked to Microsoft, where you have your single-use logon, that will work across the system with the same security being carried across. But there's two elements of security. One is of the system, but one is, of course, of the finance and the money within Business Central, with clear links to the bank account. Security is paramount, and I've already touched on some of those authorization constraints and the flexibility that we have within the system to ensure that there is a robust checks and balances of scheduled delegated authority within officers. We've even seen some officers having the ability to approve above or below a certain amount, very different to other officers, and been able to customize systems internally to that, which has been really useful in ensuring the councils aren't taking a step back from their authorization. So with that, I will step aside and let Ken hop to his screen and show you perhaps a bit more live demo of what the software looks like. Thanks, Ken.
Okay. I can share my screen just to give you a picture of the system. Don't worry, I'm not going to spend the next half hour demonstrating how you can process a purchase invoice. That's not my plan at all. I'm very aware that you can process purchase invoices in lots of different ways. Actually, that's a bad example, because I will touch on the invoicing just to let you see something particular. I just want to pick out a few, give you an overview of the system and give you a feel for how it looks and how it feels and how it's used and so on. And as Lewis was mentioning, is that it's your license to the system as part of the Microsoft 365 suite. So it's just an extension of that, so that with your Office license, you just simply add the license to GovFinance Business Central on top of that. So because you see, what happens is that it's GovFinance, but the GovFinance product is built on top of, as you can see at the top here, Business Central, Microsoft Business Central. So it is an entire Microsoft product for which we have put a layer on top, if you like, to be specific for councils and council operations. And there's a number of things in there that I won't go through them all, but I'll just touch on one or two that really do help councils in the way they operate, etc. And as such, it means that you're entitled to all the updates and everything else that Microsoft do. They're putting a huge amount of money in this. There are tens of thousands of users across the world, and they continually improve the product. So every couple of months or so, I get notifications to say, right, here's a new update. Here's all the wonderful things in it. and they're continuing to enhance things all the time. Some of the functionality is quite amazing, particularly in the light of the new AI updates and all the rest of it. So Maxwell's Copilot is helping even further. So it's really quite clever. And I'll show you a couple of examples of that just to get you involved in it. So with the licensing, there's actually two levels of license that we work with. One is what we call a full license, and that full license allows people to do posting. And then there is what's called a Teams license, which is, for less than £10 a month, you can have people using the system, creating requisitions, etc., doing things like approvals, even timesheets if you want. And there's a variety of things that people can do with a limited license like that. And of course, they can run reports, do all the inquiries they like, but they're not allowed to post things such as any transactions in the system. So it's really useful. We also have another license in there for auditors, specifically for auditors and our accountants, and it simply means that it's a free license, and that's the word free. And please, no jokes about coming from Scotland and enthusiastic about something for free, but it means that there's no cost to the council for that, and we just simply enable that, and you get a log on and you can go and see things as much as you like as well. And so it means you've got access. You can run reports to no additional cost to the council. So it's a good facility to have. And you can see. So Lucia talked about security and things like that as well. Just a quick run over some of the options in the interface. You can see the whole GovFinance. We've got a checklist here. We work through the checklist to get people up and running as quickly as possible. We set the system up in a test environment to work with to start. And we do all the testing, all the training, and we pull people through and make suggestions and recommendations of saying, well, for example, speaking to one of the councillors just yesterday, and they were saying, no, we don't have cost centres, but we'd love to do something like cost centres. And I was taking them through that kind of process. So improving the way they do things, but still keeping within their financial regulations, of course, as well. But just making things better and more improved and easier to use. And that's typically the way we do things. We've got some menus at the top. I'll come back to that in a minute. But you'll see we work in a series of tiles. And these tiles are all configurable so that we can look at this and see exactly what's going on, the number of quotes, the number of requests that are there, number of orders I'm working on, what documents I've got to register, and I'll come back to that in a minute, and so on. And we can do lots of different tasks and user alerts and things, and we can color code these so you've got your traffic light system or what should be important to you. And once you configure that, and even your own graphs to use a user, or you use them right across the board. And you've got direct access to, as Lewis was showing you the whole Power BI thing, it can either be inside GovFinance or at the top, you'll see I've got it in a separate tab at the top here. So this is designed, it's working through another Microsoft product called Power BI. And the Power BI simply takes this information directly from GovFinance and populates this. And this is a very simple structure I've got in here. So these would be what we call account groups. If I explode salaries, for example, then it's down to individual general ledger account level at that stage. So I've just grouped a heading called salaries, and that consists of 3 general ledger cost head accounts in there. And then I'm looking at things like actual to date, committed cost, which is coming from our purchase orders, of course. So we use a process of requisitions. So when somebody creates a requisition, can I buy my Ferrari? It doesn't go anywhere near committed cost, because until it's been approved, it's just a request, it's fiction. And once that's been approved, it then becomes a committed order in the system there. And of course, that moves on when it's been received or when it's been invoiced. And then it moves into actual. There's your budgets and so on as well. And just looking at things in different ways. This is all the cost centers here. So if I click on allotments, it's purely interactive. It's now just showing me the headings that are relevant and the cost heads that are relevant for allotments, for Arts Centre, and so on. If I just click it again, it just shows me them all. So you can see things around that way. There's by cost centre. If I just look at it this way, according to periods, I can see things month by month if I want to. There's a view of my bank balances, etc. There's a further breakdown of my committed cost by purchaser. So who on earth has been buying things in here? What's committed? We've got a coffee machine by David, it looks like. £2.5 for a coffee machine. That's a pretty decent coffee machine. So it gives you a complete picture of these. And these are purely very flexible, that we can set these up for specific requirements of customers, how they want to see. And in fact, we've got some councils are now considering using this. So instead of sending out the pack to councillors to approve, they simply just say, right, update your link, and all this information is updated with the next section. And it means they can do the research and inquiries and the budget comparisons there with as much detail as you want to give them before they come to the meeting. So they've got it ready, rather than giving them out at the meeting, they've got the questions and answers ready at the time. Get the excuses ready before you go to the meeting, I would always say, and that's a good way of doing that. And again, you can fire these out and export them into PDF or PowerPoint or whatever you want to do. So this information is all coming directly from the core. It's coming from the core system, and depending upon the structure, etc., as you go in here. Now, there's all the usual kind of menus and things like that at the top here. All the different options I'll fire off to in a few minutes. And of course, at the top here, you'll see some favorites. So I can bookmark certain things. For example, I want to look at my list of customers. Very easy to find the list of customers. So if I click in Mr. Smith, he was 2153. I can drill into that nice and easy. There's the invoice that's outstanding, and I can go and then look into that a bit further if I want to. There's the ongoing sales invoices. So as well as an invoice that's there, I've got another one that's waiting to be processed for Mr. Smith. We can use things like credit limits and all that kind of stuff as well. But what I was also going to show you is when we're searching within the system, we can search, of course, in the list of customers. We can also search on anything I want to. If I can punch in here something like aged, it will say, okay, here's some menu options, here's some pages, and here's also some reports. And it gives me the first three, in this case, of 23 different reports in the system that are aged. So if I run my aged accounts receivable, let's say, let's click that one so I can print the details and put it just to screen so I can just preview it. And there's customer by customer, what they owe us, and how I should do my chasing, and so on. And again, these reports can be fired out to Excel, be fired to PDF, as I see fit, or to Word, etc. If we go send to, you can see different options that I've got in here. So people have got that access. And of course, if you wanted, you could do it straight to Power BI as well and do it that way. So it's nice and easy. But I can also use this for looking for data in the system. So if I punch in something like Studio, there are all menu options for Studio, but I'm going to use this one here to search company data. And what it does here, it goes right into the system and goes everywhere through all the transactions and says, right, where have I found the word Studio? And I can see I've got a customer called Studio Sar. I've got some vendors called Nikki's Flower Studio. And therefore, if I've got somebody called Studio on the phone, then I can find out which one it is. And if I want to look at the customer, then all I simply need to, or as opposed to sales invoice, I just click on that and say, are you querying about the invoice you've received? Yes, this is the invoice I've received. That's fine. Can you get a copy of it? No problem. Boom, bang. And it integrates purely within Outlook. And a couple of clicks, and they've got a copy invoice sent straight to them, or I can see the details behind this one. So it's really easy to find information in the system in here. But let's just touch for a couple of minutes on the kind of structure, and I'll just give you an overview, and then I'll open the floor to as many questions as you like within here. This is a simple structure in here. This one's using a 5-character code, 6 in fact. I would typically recommend a 4. Keep it simple, but we would be quite happy to take whatever structure people have got. So if they're working with a certain structure of chart accounts just now, that's fine. We'll just take that over. If they want to change them, that's fine as well. It's not a problem. I just finished today. One of the customers wanted, they had, let me add them up, it was 32, it was 44,000 lines of transactions in the general ledger they wanted to bring over. So they want to bring every single transaction from last year, so they've got inquiry facilities. Fine, done. Just goes into the big journal. Just takes a little time processing, but that's fine. So we can bring over history, and it means that the history is there for inquiring, for reporting, and it means they don't need to go to another system, back to their old system to do that. So if people want to do that, we bring customers over, we bring purchase orders, invoices, the lot. So make it easy for people, because once you start using Business Central, you'll find that it's a lot easier to use than the present system. So that's the just the cost head, if you like. Then what we do is we have what the system calls dimensions. And the dimensions in the system are basically, well, you can see, for example, cost center is one. So when I post to a cost head, I can then give it one or more of these, what we call dimensions. Now we've got cost center code, we've got an EMR code, committee, budget expense. We've got an unlimited number of analysis codes that you can tag to transactions and therefore gather them in a particular way to produce some decent reporting. So just tagging things, you can do the same to customers, you can do the same to vendors, and it lets you do some really powerful analysis. And it just needs a little bit of thought, just a kind of almost a blank sheet of paper. How would I really like to analyze my data? Do I want to do it by one method or another? And a lot of people are moving towards still sticking with cost center, but also kind of grouping things, not quite cost centers within committees, but committees are going to go across different cost centers, and the option is for people to do that as you want. All we need to do is set up a rule that says you can't post to these accounts without quoting one of these cost centers. Let me just give you an example. And the cost centers I got, that's committees, sorry. If I look at cost centers, you'll see the ones that were mentioned in our example at the top. So this is the structure. We can experiment with that in the test company, and then we work with people as to what the best way of dealing with that is. So as well as working on the reporting that I've talked about in terms of once we've got transactions coming through, we can of course use Power BI. There's lots of standard reports. I've had to use one like this. This will give me the income and expenditure report by cost center. There's the same kind of headings across the top. That's one style of reporting. That's fine. Another style of reporting is what we call our financial reports. And within here, we can build our own set of reports. Now, we provide the standard ones as you would expect out of the box. So if I click on this one here, it's giving me, there's all my, if I just hide all the options, hide all the parameters, and there's all the information that we saw in that previous page. So there's the summary ones. If I click into that particular month, I'm down at just a single account for that one. If I come down to, let's say, salaries, 31,000, now I'm looking at individual general ledger accounts. If I want to go down further, then I can go down to here. I'm now looking at the individual transactions. Okay. And when I look at a particular transaction, let's just look at one, for example. If I was going to come back out to my, suppose I was going to start with chart accounts. Suppose I was going to look into fees. Oops, spelled right. There's my conference fees. Let's drill into my £40 in this example, and I can see there's an invoice for conference fees. And there it is there. For some reasons, nobody's put a cost center against this one. That's broken the rules. We'll find out what's going on there. If I click find entries, what it does is you'll see that the document number, PPV in this one, a purchase voucher, and the date. So the system knows about that. This is a document number. And what we do is we set up these series of document numbers, P for purchase, S for sales, etc., etc., J for journals, and so on, so that people will know when they're looking at it exactly what type of transaction that is. Now, what this is doing here is it's showing me there's a posted purchase invoice. Well, let me look at that invoice. And there what it's doing is it's showing me over here, if I just reduce the magnification or stretch my screen a bit, just change things around a little bit, I can see the invoice that came in. So there's the organization that have sent us the invoice, and I've got that forever. So it's really handy to drill down and see it. If I'm using my approval process, it would also tell me in this section here, I'm not using it in this demonstration system, it would also tell me who approved this, on what date, what was the purchase order, did it match the purchase order? So I've got all that kind of history if I want to ask further questions and drill down on that. So it's really easy to find out that whole process when I'm drilling down and inquiring. And what I would also say is that you'll see that when I'm drilling in here, in fact, let me look at this one very briefly. Can you see, I'll scroll on to the right-hand side. Yes, we've got that one, but we've also got what we call an entry number in here, and this is a deep down system number. And if I look at those, it means that I can, what's called my general ledger register. Oops, let's just do that. There's my register. What it does is, this is where it's keeping a record of every single transaction that's gone through. In terms of in batches. So I can see there's a particular, judging by the source code, I know that if I click in General Ledger, I can see the history of what's happened on a particular day. If it's just some adjustments, I can even go to the stage of reversing that transaction. And the nice thing is, as auditors, you'll be glad to hear that you cannot cancel transactions. You cannot edit them. Some people still ask me that. Can we not just edit that amount? No, you can't. If you want to correct it, you post a correction, which will be a credit in this debit or credit, whatever, in this case. And you'll have the original transaction and you'll have a correcting transaction. Even if it's a sales invoice or a purchase invoice, you would then produce a credit note. And you can copy from the invoice the credit note, process the credit note, and then process the one that you wanted to correct, or do a journal entry of various kind. So these are the kind of options we've got in here. There's, for example, another one for purchases. If I wanted to look at the vendor ledger from here, I can see that that purchase transaction has come through here, and there's the invoice that's come through from Screwfix by the looks of things. And I can see these. So it's really easy to find out what's been going on in the system, who's been processing what, and these entry numbers are both duplicate for the transaction on the general ledger and also from a VAT perspective as well. And on the subject of VAT, yes, we are fully registered for VAT as you would expect. So making tax digital all works really nice. A few clicks of the button, you check the whole, you have a preview of the statement. And once you're happy with it, you've done your checks, run your exception reports and everything else, then hit the button and boom, once you've done the original handshaking, it goes straight off to HMRC, and you can see the record of that on your HMRC account, should you want to. And then it works as standard as you'd expect within VAT returns. It doesn't matter whether it's monthly or quarterly or what basis. And we also still have some councils, as you know, who are not on full VAT registration, so they can't claim certain parts. Then you just need to do an adjustment as you see fit at that time. It'd be a VAT adjustment. And you record that on the system nice and easy. And just when I'm showing you some of these invoices, I thought it'd be worthwhile just to have a quick look at this, for example, is we use this facility here, and it's a great thing about working with something like Business Central, is that there are lots of add-in capabilities that we can utilize. And this is a really useful one from an organization called Continua. So what happens here is that the suppliers are then asked to email their invoice to a particular address, accounts payable at, etc. And when it comes in, it's automatically read by the system. And when it comes in, it comes into what we call our invoice register. And here's one here, for example, Amazon Business is coming in. And what the system does, and this is where the AI really comes in really quite clever, because what it does is you will see that it's putting boxes round the data. And those data, so if I click an invoice number, you'll see it's coming from that particular place. And what happens is suppliers will use the same format of invoice. Therefore, we can build a template, the system calls it, so that it knows that's the template for that particular supplier, and so on. I'll then get that in the next time, once I've got these numbers correct and the mapping correct, and it gets that right, I would say about between 97 and 100%, I would estimate. It really does. Occasionally, you need to correct it. Some invoices, as you've probably seen, are horrendous looking things. It looks as if they've been written in the back of a fag packet sometimes. And even the handwritten ones I've seen come in as well. It will deal with it. And then what it enables people to do is from this page, they can then go ahead and what we call match lines. So matching lines allows us to match against the purchase order. So we can see, for example, we've got amount, we've got so much matched, we've got a difference of 435 just now, and I could match that against that and record that as a difference, or decide to go and query that with somebody. And if I query it with somebody, the person that I'm querying it with, you can see this has been matched. So 500 clearly doesn't match against 435. What I might do in this case, if it's happy, then I just process it. And some people say that if I match the invoice against the order, then the invoice doesn't need approved. Other people say, no, it still needs approved. That's fine. And we can deal with different types of approval examples. I'll show you that in just a minute. We'll talk about approvals in a minute. What I was going to suggest is that if there is a query on this one, then what I can do, and I may have done this at the top one, this top one here, for example, I'm going to query that to the clerk. And in this example, what I've done is I've actually said in here, well, let's just look at the document, come to the top one. In my comments, I've said, is this for Donna's lunch in this example? Just pardon my humour, I'm afraid it's warped, completely warped. But what happens is you can see it's assigned to me. I can click on that, and then I can then see and respond to my accounts payables responses, questions about where this came from. Here it's like a purchase invoice comes in, they've no idea where it came from, it's just landed on their desk, and there's no purchase order for it, and nobody knows where it's going to happen. This is where you can start. And when you send that to that person, they can see that. Of course, if they have a license to GovFinance, they can see that information. And it all means that people are seeing the information right ahead. You don't need to email them attachments and all that kind of stuff. It's immediately alerted to them. But that's just one example of how we integrate, in this case, emails and so on. And there's just, when we're talking about approvals, here is just an example, and Weymouth won't mind if I use an example of one of their approval processes. And this is, we have a requisition approval process, and we'd have an invoice approval process. They may be different. And what would happen is we set up a flow chart like this for them, and we look at what their existing procedures are, and of course they've got to be obeyed without significant change. And then we set it and map it to what happens inside here. So whether it's some people have got a limit of 0, some people have got a limit of 1,000 in this example, whether it's approved and released and converted and emailed out. So this is the requisition process. The invoice approval process looks entirely different. Some people don't do approvals at all. Some people say, no, you can order what you like, but when the invoice comes in, then I'm going to send that for approval. And we've got different people with different approvals. And we set up what we call approval flows. So that depending on people's level of approval, so if you've got level, let's say 1 and 3, and the person is the first person is one who has raised a requisition, they can confirm that you've received the goods or service, but the amount is higher than this person, their boss, it's the boss's boss, it will go up to him for approval, it jumps straight up to the tree, or it can go right up through them, whichever way you want. So lots of flexibility in setting up approvals, and we just sit and work that one out and map that to people's existing process. One of the things I just wanted to touch on very briefly was the bank integration as well. So again, we use another example of an add-in for our banking integration. And what you'll see down here is that this one is actually linked. So this account in my demonstration company, you'll be glad to hear it, is linked to a demonstration NatWest account. And as such, you'll see this live balance from bank is, would that be, if only that were true, at 321 million in the bank account. That can be updated every so often, okay? So in a time that can be updated every hour, every 10 minutes, you decide. And then what happens is that when we come to things like our bank reconciliation, excuse me, is if I go into the current account, then your typical bank reconciliation looks a bit like this, where on the right-hand side is all the transactions from your cash book. On the left-hand side is all the statement lines. And all that happens in here is you go to bank, and then you say, get transactions from the bank. And the system knows which ones you've already got. So if people want to do this, I would recommend this be done on a daily basis because it makes life so much easier. So if you think about, you've got a customer, and most councils would check the bank balance every day anyhow. So by pulling the transactions in from the bank, you can then see what's coming through the bank, and using the co-pilot up the top here, is it will try and automatically match these transactions here. In this case, none, because I'm playing around with imaginary data. I need to work on my data a bit better. It would then flag to say, yes, I've matched this transaction to what's in your bank, but in some cases, I will have transactions coming through my bank which are not in my cash book. That's pretty normal. What I then do is simply hit this button here to highlight 2 of these transactions, transfer to a journal, and then what I'm doing is it's into a journal process, and it says, great, okay, so what should I do with these amounts? You can see I've done this already in this example. There's the amounts coming through here. You tell me where that needs to get posted to, whether it's a customer, whether it's a vendor, or a GL account. Does it include VAT, exclude VAT, etc.? So therefore, by pull these transactions through, I can then process them in my system and allocate them to my bank reconciliation at the same time. So you're doing about 3 jobs all at once, because if it's a customer and I say it's a particular customer, Then what it lets me do at the same time is apply the entries. In other words, allocate to see which sales invoice did this money coming in relate to. Nothing in here as an example. So I'm recording the cash coming in, allocating it to the customer invoice, and reconciling my bank all at once. Just makes things so much easier. And it would tick these off to see them. So the integration of the banking is great for bank statements. And we also do the integration with banks when it comes to doing payments. So if I'm looking at a payment batch, I can then go ahead and suggest vendor payments, or pull all the invoices and everything else that's due in my purchase ledger, use criteria in here to say, maybe I want to use payment terms. Everybody up to the end of the year is fairly generous. Maybe not include invoices that are not due. Once I've got my process and I've got them all authorized, and we've got a report to help with the authorization as well, and that can be emailed straight to various people. We can then go to bank, and then we can simply hit this button here, send payments to bank. And what that does is it takes all the information here. There's the recipient bank account. There's his, in this case, there's his sort code in his bank account. So when we click send payments to bank, it will then go straight into the bank, ready for you to authorize. So when I hit that button, it will check the information, say, yep, that's all good. Obviously, I'm going to get an error message here because I don't have a bank account. But if I did hit that button, it would then say, right, it then opens up the bank page for me to log into my bank as normal. And when I go in there, it says, look, there's all this payment run you've got there. You now need to go through your standard authorization processes in there. It simply avoids the rekeying of that information into the bank account, which is really important and helps with the accuracy of things too. So that's the kind of integration we do it with banking. The other one I was just going to point out before I circle back to reporting again was we do, we've of course got under finance, we will have like I said, general budgets, and we can have as many budgets as you want in here. We can create new budgets from last year plus 5%, or we can do all sorts of various things. Give me the actuals minus 5%, and then work it out in detail from here. So when I look at a particular account, I can see over here, there's all of my different cost centers, all building into that one particular GL account. So I can do it by cost center, by committee, by whatever. Or even I can do that if I'm just reporting at group level. It means I can set my budgets at group level. I don't need to do it by individual GL account. These are options people have got, and they decide how to do that. So we've also got environment capability. That's one of the specific council things. So if we are robbing Peter to pay Paul, to use a normal expression, is it will say, yep, there's the budget I'm going to do, take it from that code in cost center, what's the amount, and put it to that code in cost center. And it will then record environment reference. For example, that might be the meeting minutes of the council to say, yeah, I need to cross-refer that when I see that. So when I drill into this one, just as I showed you there, that could say, there's all my original import, but down here it will say, okay, but here's another one. Here's an environment that's gone through here for a particular reallocation of budget to another one. And all that comes together when I do my financial reporting. So in doing my summarized one, I think I showed you that one. There's an annual return, for example. There's your good old AGAR. So I've got one council just now, and they say they want to bring all the history over so he can run his year end in GovFinance. He doesn't want to do another year end in his old system. And that's absolutely fine. We'll pull all his history over and let them do it. And once you've done the mapping exercise to see what is GL accounts, cost heads, whatever your terminology is, how that links to there and where that extra information comes from, it just sits there. It's great. It's job's done. The one thing you find about GovFinance as well is that we don't use the way other systems work with period ends and year ends is completely different in GovFinance. It's really much, much easier. We do what we call a soft close. It therefore means that in this current year, in what I'm looking at here, I can see all year's data. Now, I did a year-end close, in fact, first thing this morning on historic data. And what it does is it simply creates your credit transaction. If you think about an expenditure account, it creates a credit transaction, but it flags that transaction as what we call a closing transaction. It therefore means if you're looking at the history of that account and you say exclude the closing transaction, you can then see a complete history going all the way back. Whereas if you included that closing transaction, obviously you see a big credit in the March month, but much easier, and it's all nice and easy to report. So when you're running any of these reports, you will see, if I go back to my summarized income and expenditure again, you will see that there's, when I'm looking at the budget, that this is an example of this month, last month, 2 months ago. There's a different period comparison. Let's just do the standard one. Let's use this one. That's one I showed you around, the funds available, committed cost, etc. And just by changing and different, having what we call column definitions, is you're completely changing the way your report looks. Can you see that? I can also use filters. So just show me for allotments, and all the numbers will change. And I can have a setting in here that says, well, don't show that row. If there's nothing in that row, just hide that row. That's absolutely easy to do that. For consistency and for ease, I just keep it in just to let people see that option, or just remove the allotments. And this is where you can group cost centres as well together, and so on. And as well as that, we can also do the same for the EMR filters. So we set them up just similar to cost centres. So when you're processing a transaction, you would give it a cost centre code, and you can also give it one of your EMR dimension codes, which means that when it's gathering all that information together, we can grab the movement as it comes through. Now, we have lots of councils, some working, and they work on different bases when they want to report an EMR. If I look at this one, for example, you'll see I've actually got a column over here, the EMR. So that line there, for example, health and safety, that actual 5,500 in that account, sorry, is completely covered by that EMR. Okay. Some other councils say, no, I'm not going to show it like that. I'm going to show it below my surplus deficit line. We can do it down here instead. Other councils say, no, I'm going to net that 5,500 off, so it's going to show 0 in my report. That's fine. Either way around, whichever way they want to work. And it's funny because you get some people who are so insistent that there is no other way to do this other than doing it the way they're doing it. So, and we just sit back and smile and say yes, and let people say that's not our responsibility. If you want to do it that way, that's fine, and we're happy to let you do it, and you can suffer the consequences. So that gives you an idea. So, and as you saw, it's easy to create these new style reports. If we teach people how to do it, if you want to see it by cost centre, just as I showed you there. I'm just hiding the options so we don't see the filters. There is how do I want to look at that. If I wanted to see it a different way around, and I wanted, cost centres, and I wanted to see instead of it that way, let's just see the one where I've got a comparison by year or a period comparison, this month, last month, etc. Not a problem. And I find that really useful because when I used to do my accounts, the first thing I did was when I looked at my cost heads, how does this month compare to my last few months? Is there something weird going on? How does it compare to my budget? Am I rocking things with my budget, or am I fairly straightforward in comparison? And this kind of thing is really useful. I don't report this way. I'm just using this as a tool so I can query and say, well, why was that? What on earth is that 380 of a credit for arts? And I can drill in there. And there's my 300 there. I can find out bookkeeping. Yeah, it looks like it was an invoice that came through. Nice and easy to see. What invoice that? Who is that to? Oh, just find entries. Okay, let me see the posted invoice. What on earth was somebody saying, giving my credit for, etc. So you're reporting from the top down and finding out what's going on about it. You have a huge amount of control in the system over what people can do and what they can see, making sure that people are doing things according to the regulations that you've set. I'm sorry, I've probably gone very quick through it. I'm just giving you a feel for some of the functionality in the system. I would say generally, as I look at all the customers that have councils that have now using it, and working with it now, they are pleased with the simplicity of it. Is once they get used to, we don't call them suppliers anymore, you call them vendors. Once you get past that kind of thing, it's very straightforward to get to use. And it's a logical process. Every one of these screens can be changed. If I went to personalize, I can chop or change, and if I don't want that column in here, then I can just simply say, just hide it. And I can add extra columns in. I've got lots of other columns I can add into this page. Once I'm happy with them, I just drag them over and say, yeah, that's the way I want to do it. And what we try to do in there is we try to keep it such that we keep it consistent for everybody within a group, so that you're not looking at when it talks about personalizing, that's me just changing it for me as a user. But I prefer to do it for a group of people. So if you've got people in the purchasing side or all the finance team, then they're all looking at the same type of screens. But keep in mind that the system is designed to be all things to all men. But we've got a kind of out-the-box recommendation of the way councils use it. And if it doesn't fit, then that's fine. We've got options to change that. But we'll give people some options. So I'm sorry. Sometimes talk like a machine gun. I get carried away and get excited about it. It's pretty sad, I know, but there you go. That's my job. Did that make any sense? Can I answer any questions? Has anybody got any questions that they would like to ask about the whole system? Brian, I thought you were going to ask me a question there. You okay?
I was just settling down from the whistle-stop tour.
It was indeed, yes.
Yeah, very interesting. I'll see what any of my clients are using it and be able to practice run with them.
Yeah. It's there are certain techniques that I would be using as an auditor to interrogate approvals, to interrogate entries and who's recording things and adjustments and so on. But also providing a lot of people with some advice on the best way of doing things. There's so many different ways you can even do a journal, for example. There's lots of different ways you can do that. Recurring journals, accruals, prepayments, reversing, self-reversing journals, all these kind of things. Direct debits, the lot. So there's lots of different ways of doing it. And it's we're just helping people on. For example, there's one that we did for somebody just the other day, the new rules or recommendations down, all this kind of stuff. Say the quick show us things like, it's not here. I mean, beg your pardon. If I go to my requisition process, it's all in here. So when somebody's creating one, we've got a lot of things to do. Is it going to be on the asset ledger? Is it being risk assessed? All these kind of different things. Of new fields that we've added here. The whole sustainability down to the stage of CO2 per transaction and all that kind of thing. This is where Microsoft have gone and got all that functionality in there to enable that, so that you can get that as a side product of your reporting as well. So lots of flexibility, lots of capabilities, and it's improving and changing all the time. And what we do is we've been doing, we had one planned last month that actually didn't happen. But what we're doing is with the newer versions of the software, we're bringing our customers together and say, okay, here's some new things, or indeed here's some new advanced things. So when we do the initial setup of the system, we take people through how to do basic processing. And then once they're comfortable, we then take them to the next level. There's lots of new things, more advanced things that it can do. Some of the searching techniques that I mentioned. Things like this. This is a new one that came out just relatively recently. If I pick, let's say, total income, and if I drill into that, that's going to be a lot of transactions on total income. But what I can now do is click this, what's called the analysis button. And what it lets me do is almost build pivot tables on the data. So that's by month, by committee, by cost center, by month. So I can get all these, and with these there, so it's by month, by year. It now allows me to do lots of analysis, whereas previously you would have to dump all that into Excel and then do some pivot tables or do some analysis there. Now you can do it all in here. So giving people these kind of skills and the ability to inquire that just makes their life a bit easier. to interrogate as well. So just taking people to the next level. Tina, have I bamboozled you a bit?
Thanks for that, Ken. Really useful. Are there any questions for anyone on the call? As Ken said, there's a lot he's gone through, but hopefully a really useful snapshot of how councils will be using this product. No, thanks, Kate, for the message there. Any questions from anyone else? Has it been useful? Oh, sorry, go on.
How many of these have you got in Northamptonshire?
Good question.
My geography is not good. Keep in mind, I'm from Ayrshire in Scotland, so.
And mine's even worse.
We've probably got about between customers who are live and going live right now, we're just about on about 10 or 11 off the top of my head right now. But we've got a few. In fact, we started a new project yesterday, Lewis.
Yes.
So that was just another one starting off there. So, and I've got one more. We're just to arrange a kick-off meeting.
It's still very new. Oh, sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say, just a quick question, going back to the screen when you said about asset register, etc. Is that just a tick list, or will that actually populate an asset register?
Oh no, you've got your full-blown fixed assets module in here. So, and this is designed, if you appreciate, from commercial organisations would then run depreciation. It would be linked to the balance sheet and so on. But I fully appreciate councils don't do that. But you can set it up so that if you've got an asset there, and let's say you process a purchase invoice, then what would happen is that that book value, for example, has come from a purchase invoice. Still goes into your expenditure, obviously, because that's the way councils operate. But it's also adding it into the value here. So it means you can run a report on your fixed assets module that says, look, by cost center or whatever it is, here's the value of my assets as they sit just now. And then you would process a disposal as and when you wanted to sell that one. Okay. So, and you can also, for example, record for maintenance. So if you've got, again, a purchase invoice, let's say for maintenance on this asset, then you can record it and flag it against this asset to say, look, I've spent some money repairing it. It just simply feeds that maintenance ledger. Of course, it goes into your expenditure account, but it's also going into your asset register. So you can see, yeah, here's what I'm spending on the assets that I've purchased. And it's quite good, particularly from a renewals and replacements perspective as well. So you can say, look, this thing's getting old, we've spent so much on it, maybe it's time to renew it. So you've got that information to hand should you need to. That help, Tina? You can also assign, as I say, assign cost centers, you can assign people, you can categorize and all the rest of it in here as well, where you bought it from, service dates, things like that. You can put a picture on it, should you so request.
Sorry, go on.
Presumably there are bookings modules and allotments modules that allow you to sort out room bookings and allotment rentals and things that integrate into this.
Correct, that's right. That's a separate, it's really a separate product to be quite clear. Because some councils just want the finance system, they don't want the booking system, or maybe they've got something of their own as well. And or indeed some, so with their booking system, yes, you create the booking there. You can generate the invoice in the booking system if you want, or what you do is, even if they do that, then we can bring that information is then pulled through into GovFinance and we process it as a sales ledger transaction at that time. Matching off to the receipt, etc., whether it's GovPay or whatever it might be. So we process them. We also do things like, we've also, at the top you'll see here, I've got what we call Lemon. Some people use a booking system called Lemon. And what we've done is we've got a specific reporting, an import capability, I should say. So if they're using a different system, then we can import that data as long as it's a suitable format right into GovFinance as well. So we're simply recording the revenue with the VAT and all the rest of it, and it's all coming through in one place. So it integrates with that. Just want to see it at the top here, Claire, you might like this one. My gaming profile. You're probably wondering, what on earth are we doing here? One of the problems we have, and this is not just with Cloudy and GovFinance, this is an issue that I've had for many, many years across all the implementations that I've done, is getting people to test the system, okay? So what this gaming profile does is it turns the whole testing into a bit of fun, meaning that if I go to the achievement guide, is if somebody goes ahead and creates a quote, they'll get 25 points, whoopee, all right? And what we're doing is we're encouraging people to process these transactions, and we can keep a leaderboard on who has been doing this, okay? And we can also see over here is that there is a link, and if I click on that link, it takes to how to do that particular transaction. So there's no excuse to say, I can't do this because I don't know how to do it. Here's how to go and create a customer if you're allowing people to do that. And there's all the help text and everything else, all about that one. So what we're doing is we're turning it into a bit of fun, but in the same respect as we can then see, there's the leaderboard. So of all the different users we've got, who's doing the most testing? It's the person at the top. No, we're not responsible for prizes, although we should probably introduce something like that. It'd be good fun. But it's half kidding, half serious, because that way we can then see who has been testing the system. Because if people don't test and then you go live and then things don't work right, you say, well, you haven't tested the system, you know. So as soon as people get training, we encourage people to do some testing, and that's a good way of doing it. Obviously, this just exists in the test company. We don't do that in live, and it's interesting to use. That's what that is. So yeah, the integration is separate, but we will share for example, Claire, customers. Okay, so you create a customer in bookings, it will be also created in GovFinance. Okay, and we can make that bi-directional or single directional. Because clearly, if they create a customer in bookings and then we get an invoice for that customer, then we've got to have the customer in GovFinance as well. Or we can group them. That's another way of doing them. So we can say that everything comes in under the one account, but it's up to you how we get to do it.
Thank you for coming along. Great to see a few of you today, and I hope to see you again soon. Thank you.